where not just women are in danger, but all marginalized people, where being uniquely different right now might truly be considered a crime. It seems as though we had all slipped into a false sense of comfort, that justice would prevail and that good would win in the end. Well, good did not win this election, but good will win in the end. So what today means is that we are far from the end. Today marks the beginning of our story. The revolution starts here. The fight for the right to be free, to be who we are, to be equal. Let's march together through this darkness, and with each step, know that we are not afraid. That we are not alone. That we will not back down. That there is power in our unity, and that no opposing force stands a chance in the face of true solidarity. And to our detractors that insist that this march will never add up to anything,
Boston Red here with Friday Java, a weekly magazine of political theory, polling, and commentary. It is part of the history called people that make up this fascinating journey. We are part of the Obama network. For that, we make no apologies. What we pledge to do is give you the facts on a bridge to history. What body politics is, the most up-to-date theories of political science and psephology. Stay tuned for this incredible ride. Boston Red, peace out. From WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network. Our episode is Friday Java, an extended version. Extended version means that it was not in the morning, that it's more in the evening time, and the date is the 31st of January 2020. Our last episode of January as we go into February. Let's bring you up to date on a number of items. The Senate has now adjourned. There were three different motions, four actually, before the Senate. The first motion to have witnesses was defeated 51-49. Willard Romney of Utah and Susan Collins of Maine, two Republicans that joined the 47 Democrats in voting yay. And the nays, of course, were 51. And then they had, four other votes there. One to subpoena John R. Bolton, 53-47 along the party line. This was 53-47 was the first vote. The Bolton vote again, once more, was 51-49. That was the one to subpoena John R. Bolton. And the other vote was for evidence, written evidence, etc., pertaining to Bolton. Again, 51-49, two Republicans joining. And, of course, the 51 were the Republicans. And then we had, two final votes. They were along party lines, 53-47. That's 47 Democrats, 53 Republicans. And then 53 Republicans and 47 Democrats. Now they are in adjournment. They will reappear on Monday, the 3rd of February. In the interim, the Iowa caucuses will be on a Monday. The Super Bowl will be on Sunday. We don't cover the Super Bowl, and we'll talk about that before we finished here. But nonetheless, there will be an interview by DJ Trump, I believe, at halftime during the Super Bowl, and many senators, including McConnell, have fundraisers during the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl has become increasingly in the political sphere and in the right-wing political sphere because of what happened to one Colin Kaepernick there, and the kneeling down. We'll have a kneeling story from the Teacher of the Year, and we'll bring that to you also. Some more revelations came out today from Bolton's anticipated book. It's called In the Room. As part of the title, that'll be out in late March or April, and evidently bits and pieces will be coming out to the audience. The latest revelation being involving the White House counsel, Cipollone himself, and about being in as one of the actors in the ongoing saga of Ukraine. The other item was Marie Yovanovitch, the former ambassador to the Ukraine that was recalled by DJ Trump, and the subject of slander, etc., a campaign against her, has formally retired. She was teaching at Georgetown. Georgetown is known as the Foreign Policy School. That was her last assignment. She had been ambassador in many administrations. She was a career State Department worker. So Marie Yovanovitch retires and from the State Department of the Foreign Service. And she'll have a long career, no doubt, teaching. She perhaps will be writing books, and she will stay in the loop. We have some polling here we'll get to, and of course the people from, I believe, the University of Virginia at Charlottesville, and we'll pay homage to have a hire. And nonetheless, this is from the New York Times. This is starting our Iowa story here. Joe Lunchbox Biden saying, "I'm a Democrat." He accuses Bernie Sanders of not being a party member. Attacks on his rival in hours came after another candidate, Little Petey, criticized both men in a day of sparring and the underscored pressure they faced to excel on Monday's caucuses. Well, Joe Lunchbox Biden, we'll get to some of the polls here. This is in Peoria, Iowa, as Sanders makes a competitive run. This is Bernie for the nomination, and he also did a jab at Bernie's gun control record. As many know, Vermont is one of the states that has a gun-making business. "I'm a Democrat," he said, who moments earlier told reporters at a Dairy Queen here that the contrast between himself and his top rivals were self-evident. He asked to elaborate, swipes at Sanders, who represents Vermont as an independent in the Senate. "Well, he's not," he says. "He's not registered as a Democrat to the best of my knowledge." And Bernie has a different view. The remarks in response to a reporter's question capped the day of sparring amongst some of his leading candidates. Little Petey escalated his attacks on Biden as well as Bernie, taking direct aim at the two leading candidates. He's trying to gain ground. He won't do it. Biden, when asked about Sanders' record on gun control, directly attacked him for opposing one of the most popular Democratic-backed measures in the 90s, something he resisted doing in detail as recent as last week. "I think Bernie made his verbal amendments for his record on guns," he said in a barely vain jab. Asked whether that was sufficient, he said, "Well, I think he means it. I think that the facts that he gave the gun manufacturing exemption that no other industry in the world has." Biden also noted Sanders had voted against the Brady bill, which instituted background checks on handguns 5 times. I think he regrets that. I think he changed his mind there. So anyway, nonetheless, Bernie's a campaign manager. Last minute cheap barbs of desperation aren't a good look from a candidate who proclaims his desire to unite the party. Throughout his career, Sanders has also voted to support background checks and other gun control measures. Biden and Bernie, 2 polls in the race, are competing for overlapping slices of the blue-collar vote in Iowa. Bernie's evident traction has privately alarmed some of Biden's donors, no doubt about it. The two men have clashed before on issues ranging from Social Security to the Iraq War. Pressed on his Social Security record, Biden handed a CBS News reporter a printout of talking points titled Bernie's False Attacks on Social Security. Mayor Petey, the former mayor of a little hamlet of South Bend, dismissed disputes between the two men as kind of politics in the past. This is not the time to get caught up in revealing arguments before, he told several hundred people gathered in a ballroom in Decorah, Iowa. The less 2020 resembles 16 Our Party, the better. The stump speech and answers to campaign events. Little Petey steadfastly avoided direct hits on his opponent, instead drawing contrasts that reporters and more engaged voters understand to be whacks at Bernie and Joe Lunchbox Biden. His decision to call out his chief rivals by name underscores the pressure Little Petey faces for a strong finish and signals of intensification of the race that has been relatively polite for a year. I heard Vice President Biden saying this is no time to take risks on someone new, he says, but history has shown that the bigger the risk we take with a very important election coming up to look the same in the Washington playbook. And again, he's back to Little Petey is Medicare for all, college free, go forward than most Democrats support. I heard Senator Sanders calling for a kind of politics that says you've got to go all the way here or nothing else counts. Speaking in Newton, Iowa, and an apparent response to Little Petey, Biden warned about letting this Democratic race slide into the negative. We just can't do it. As Barack said, the last thing we need is to form a circle or a circular firing squad. He's correct about that. In Pella, Iowa, he purchased ice cream for himself and his team. He was far more pointed when speaking with reporters. It must be a deciding thing. We are getting a little tight, he said of Little Petey, asked about the difference between himself and polling such as Little Petey. You guys see Pete, he's a good guy. You guys see Bernie, you see me. I mean, some things are self-evident in the contrast. I've gotten more than 8,600 votes in my life. And he's talking about Little Petey there. And the early comments from Buttigieg were in keeping with his effort to paint himself as a type of transformative figure. He argues neither Biden or Sanders is. For days, the campaign has been sending out fundraisers. We've seen some of those because they buy some of the same lists. Too risky to nominate Bernie. Not a very good idea for him. In a more aggressive version of political contrast, he sought to paint in Iowa since Labor Day, when he was the first of leading candidates to begin TV broadcast ads in the state. He highlighted those messages with subtle arguments against the progressive politics of Senator Warren and Sanders. Though Petey began his TV advertising campaign in Iowa first, there are fewer ads on the air for him in the final weeks before the caucus than there were for his competition. He is being outspent by Bernie, Liz Warren, and super PACs backing Joe Lunchbox Biden, who's saturating the local airwaves. And that's an old tactic to save up the best for last. Pesca reporters earlier this week has resisted calling Sanders a risk himself and would not say if he believes Sanders could beat Trump. On Tuesday, he cast his new remarks as airing an honest and respectful difference between the visions of the three men. In a moment when many Democrats want party unity around the goal of defeating Trump, a message that Biden has often pressed from the stage despite swipes at his rivals. Aides to other candidates say Iowa Democrats aren't eager for a contentious race. I think there's an appetite for negativity amongst Iowa caucus goers. That is from Narim Sturzenbach, who advises Amy Klobuchar. I think historically when there have been aggressive negative ads, it's not necessarily worked out for the candidate. That's the case. This is Little Petey's last stands. And some of his ads, campaign stops have the word "turn the page" spelled out in large blue letters. And he is 38 years old. That is Little Petey, a political newcomer. He argues would both be a better chance of defeating Trump in the general election. Unflattered mandate to enact progressive politics in Washington. There's no doubt about that. Let's just switch here a little bit. I think we can get this article up. This is from the Times. We've been doing a lot from the LA Times. The helicopter in Kobe Bryant's crash wasn't legal to fly with poor visibility. It's called flight rules. The pilot who flew Kobe and several others through interior weather conditions was certified to fly on instrument conditions, but the company he worked for was not. So this is a big difference there. When the copter carrying the legend Kobe Bryant crashed into a fog-bound mountainside on Sunday, killing all 9 people aboard, the pilot, who was struggling to avoid the clouds, did not have the legal authority to navigate his instruments with this instrument because the aircraft owner did not have the necessary federal certificate. Now, they were flying, this is Island Express helicopters, which owned the Sikorsky S-76B, had a Federal Aviation Administration operating certificate that limited its pilots to fly on what is known as visual flight rules. That's VFR, with at least 3 miles of visibility and a cloud ceiling of no more than 1,000 feet above. They were over 3,000 up there. The copter had sophisticated instruments on board. The FAA has approved for instrument flight, and the pilot Aaron Zebian was certified to fly by them, but because of limitations, how the company is approved by the FAA, couldn't do it. Limitations on Island's operation are not unusual. Another operator, Van Nuys Airport, where the company is based, says none of its charter operators there have gone to the trouble or the expense of winning certification for flight instruments, in part because it's normally so simple to navigate at low altitudes as in Southern California. New details about their certificate shed lights on questions why the pilot did not file an instrument flight plan that would have allowed him to climb well above and they didn't respond. Incidentally, this Island Express is now out of the business. That comes from the LA Times. None of the local charter companies maintain certificates that allow them to fly using instruments. That is from Claudia Lori, who owns Group 3 Aviation. That's another charter school and flight school based at the same airport that is in Van Nuys. This is something you want to keep in mind. The copter left John Wayne Airport in Orange County at 9 a.m. Once he cleared Van Nuys and turned south and went west for Calabasas, the pilot reported that visibility was sufficient to meet the legal requirements, but as he went on, the weather appeared to worsen. So he should not been up there. The Sikorsky is a large and powerful copter, often used as a luxury ride for VIPs. It's also used extensively for shuttering crews on offshore oil rigs, carrying emergency medical crews. It has a good safety record, in part because it has 2 engines that allow it to keep flying even if one fails now, and a backup hydraulic system. So in other words, it was not a mechanical. Some people had talked about that. No, it's because of the vision out there. All companies in the region fly the S76B almost exclusively with a single pilot. Only a few safe-conscious clients have asked in the past for 2 pilots, which they probably should have had this time. Flying with 1 pilot is risky, this according to Doug Sollenbrecken, who flies the same Sikorsky for decades in the mountainous British Columbia. That's in Canada. The manufacturer said in a statement that the S-76 model can be flown by either 1 or 2 pilots, and operators choose based on regulations or requirements. Another factor is cost, said some pilots. The customers don't want to pay more, so they go with 1. That's another commercial jet pilot there, period. Legally can be flown with 1 pilot. Technically, it's a very bad idea. So, in other words, more is coming out on the Sikorsky, and we want people, obviously, to think about it. Now, let me see if we can get anything on Kobe Bryant here. And while we are doing that, the World Health Organization has issued a global alert on the virus, the coronavirus there. Major airline companies throughout the world, including Delta, etc., in the U.S., have suspended flights to the People's Republic of China. And the CDC, based in Atlanta, has quarantined 190 or so people out in California that returned from Wuhan, China. So that they have done. And in the LA Times, the headline is here, has suspended operations. The Island Express helicopters, the company that owned the aircraft, but crashed, killing 9 people, including Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna, have suspended operations indefinitely. The company said in a statement, the shock of the accident affected all staff and management, decided that services would be suspended until such time as it was deemed appropriate for staff and customers. The company said, and according to an older version on the website, it had been owned, this is Island Express, family owned since 1986. The West Coast largest fleet of, again, the Sikorsky S-76. The company advertised it as providing premium flying experience, noting customers can fly in the same helicopter used by the President of the United States and the British royal family. Brian regularly used the Sikorsky S-76B, and it was built in 1991 and owned by the Charter Service. And again, we departed John Wayne Airport, and it passed over Boyle Canyon near Dodger Stadium and circled around Glendale during the flight. The copter was not equipped with an alarm system that could have warned the pilot he was approaching a hillside, as according to the National Transportation Safety Board. So that does add to it. The count on the coronavirus is up very close to 10,000 people. 190 have died so far, and not 190, over 213 people have died, and that record will go up. On our numbers, man, that's our macroeconomics program, we explored the coronavirus and some of the shaping models that are appearing on modeling it from an economic sense and also from an epidemiological sense. So we are looking at that and the 14-day incubation period, which means that you had thousands of people going out there. It is formerly known as 2019 in COVID, amongst other things. The government operates on presidential quarantines, affecting in China 50 million people in 17 states. Period. China is setting a new standard for outbreaks response, and it's not an aggregation, he said, and the virus is now in 22 countries. And this is big. The stock market today dropped 613 points on the New York Stock Exchange. The spread again of 2019 in COV, I think this is what it is called, in Vietnam, rudimentary there. But they have been doing it all over the world. They have been quarantining people. And then the debate will be, well, are the quarantines themselves viable here? Let me just look at our time. Okay. We'll go to now some extensive polling in Iowa. Then we'll look at some of these polls, but we'll go over the real Clear Politics latest polls here as of this particular broadcast. And we'll look down. There's quite a few polls out. And there will be, I believe, one more Des Moines registry poll. This is a poll in California. KQED NPR poll in California has Bernie Sanders of Vermont well ahead by 14 points. He's at 30. Joe Lunchbox Biden at 15. Liz Warren at 16. And little Mayor Petey at 8. Bloomberg at 4. Amy Klobuchar, who is not known in California, has 3. And Kelsey Gabbard is at 4. And in Pennsylvania, we have, this is Franklin Marshall, been in the business a long time. Joe Lunchbox Biden is up by 7 there. Liz Warren's at 14. Bernie Sanders is at 15. Bloomberg at 7. And little Petey has dropped to 6. And Amy Klobuchar and Mr. Yang are both at 5. The approval ratings go from the outliner Rasmussen poll at 50. That's DJ Trump's approval rating to the Morning Consult, that is the Politico report at 41%, disapproval 14 up there. The generic ballot, this is from, again, the Morning Consult, Democrats ahead by 6, wrong track up by 22. That was on Thursday. And we go to Wednesday, we have a Monmouth poll here. Biden is up by 2. Bernie, this is in Iowa. Bernie is at 21, Biden at 23. Little Petey is down to 16. Warren is at 15. Amy Klobuchar is coming up at 10. And Yang at 3. Tom Steyer is at 4 there. Iowa State poll, very important. We followed it. Bernie Sanders up by 5, 24. And then we have Joe Lunchbox Biden at 15. Little Petey at 17, Liz Warren at 19. Amy Klobuchar comes up a point at 11, but stubbornly still in that 5 there. And then we go to Florida State, where Joe Biden's up by 24. Bloomberg is 17. You can see where this is going. Bernie is at 9. Warren is at 7. Little Petey at 6. And Amy Klobuchar at 4. The Democratic nomination, this is YouGov poll here. Biden up by 2. Holding on by the skin of his teeth. Joe Lunchbox Biden at 26. Bernie at 24. Liz Warren at 20. Bloomberg at 4. Little Petey at 7. Yang at 4. Amy Klobuchar at 4 also. And a pathetic outliner here, the Hill. Somebody made a comment on Facebook. We were talking about the Hill's writer center a publication with Harris X. Biden is up by 12 there. It's a laugher. Bernie is at 17. Bloomberg is at 11. Liz Warren's at 9. Doesn't do any good there. Little Petey at 5. Yang at 4. And Amy Klobuchar at 2. Kelsey Gabbard holds on there. And then we go to Ipsop. This is on the presidential rating. They have ODJ at 41. Disapproval at 56. He's actually lost numbers here. YouGov's a little better. They have him at 44. And generic ballot here, Democrats are up by 9. Democrats 48 to Republicans 36. We do look at these numbers from time to time here. This is out on a Wednesday. And let's go to some of these, and we can get them up here. This is the KQED organization, news organization in California. Bernie pulls away from the pack is the headline there, and this is in the state of California. And NPR poll, etc. here. Comes from voters' age. This is where Bernie gets at 18 to 34 with 53% of the support. Shows he's the top choice of Latinos at 36 and Asians at 27. Biden has retained his lead amongst
California's African American voters, with 35% supporting him, 27 supporting Bernie. Bernie is coming up there. Little Petey, favored by 8% of likely voters in the primary, while Mr. Yang is at 5%. Tulsi Gabbard and the billionaire and former mayor were top choice of just 4%. Amy Klobuchar at 3%. Part of the problem Amy Klobuchar is having, of course, in California, she's not known yet. She picked up, incidentally, a new endorsement. She's got the Quad Cities, and now she's got a different endorsement there in Iowa. So she is picking up these endorsements, although she's stuck in the Senate. And we just talked about the Senate schedule. They will vote on the impeachment of DJ Trump on Wednesday at 4 o'clock. And a non-political tip, the Super Bowl. 37% think the San Francisco 49ers will win, while 16% believe the Kansas City Chiefs will come out. Nearly half the respondents, 48%, they really don't know. When it comes to news coverage, 23% of Californians say they hear lots about the NFL premier game the past 2 weeks, compared with those who say they heard a lot more about impeachment. 87% Australian wildfires, 62%, and the coronavirus outbreak, 54%. So this kind of shows you where the Super Bowl is in the minds of people. It is not as popular as they would have you believe, and because of conditions, concussions, etc. It was 1,967 interviews. This is from January 25th, 2020. Survey has a margin of error of 3.4 for Democrats, 5.2 for Republicans. Let's move on here. We'll probably save some of this polling for the week that was, which we normally have out here. And let's see what we got going here. Another poll. We look at some of the crosstabs will be in here. This is Franklin Marshall, a respected poll out of Pennsylvania. And we'll wait while it comes up. 51%, half of the state's registered voters believe the state is headed in the right direction. While most registered voters say the state has been expressing positive views about the direction of the state of Pennsylvania. Registered voters list government and politicians 18%, the economy and personal finance at 16%, taxes at 11%, and an assortment of other issues there. Most voters report they are better off, 33%, are the same at 54% financially compared to last year. And the voters report they're, better off, 31, the same, 33% there. Most Republicans, let me get this down here, 67%, then independent, 39% of Democrats feel this way about the country. Few respondents saying they are worse off compared to the October poll is notable. Less than 2 in 5 of 38% of registered voters believe the U.S. is headed in the right direction. We've had those enormous times around here, and wrong track, right track here. There's no consensus among registered voters about the benefit, costs, or consequences supporting natural gas extraction. I'm not sure. I guess that's parts of Pennsylvania do a lot of oil and gas. About 2 in 5, 38% registered voters in Pennsylvania believe Trump is doing a good job as president, while a slightly higher percentage than his October ratings compared Trump's to President Obama currently is similar to President Obama rating at the same point this year. Majority Republicans, 77% the president's positively, while percent of Democrats, conservatives, 85% or more. Then moderates, 20% of liberals, 5% give the president a positive rating. And this is basically where he is, and compared with President Obama. Two in 5, that's 41% of registered voters in Pennsylvania believe DJ Trump is good enough job to deserve re-election, and 38%, and and 83% of those respondents said they would vote for him no matter who runs against him. On the other hand, 3 and 5, 57%, say it's time for a change, and this is a model by Professor Amowitz out of and 4 and 5, 87% said they will vote against the president no matter who runs against him. Taken together, 50% of registered voters are firmly supporting a change, and a third, 35, are firmly supporting no change, leaving the balance still trying to decide where they're going on this issue. This is an extensive poll. One reason, 2/3, 67% of the state's registered voters say they are very interested in the 2020 election. Level of interest is as high as it was in the weeks leading up to 2018 midterm, when 3 and 4, 71% of the registered voters reported they were very interested in that election. And at the moment, 76% of the Democrats and 63% of the Republicans, 47% of the independents that are very interested. Self-described liberals, 78%. Conservatives, slightly lower numbers here. We'll be watching this at 68, and moderates at 61. Registered voters, Democrats are less clear in October, though Biden remains at the top choice. Bernie Sanders at 15, Liz Warren at 14, Bloomberg at 7, Amy Klobuchar at 5, 3 and 4 Sanders, 70%. Competition among the top 3 candidates driven by ideology. 3 and 4 Sanders, 72%, and Warren, 73%. Supporters identify as liberals compared to only 1 in 2, 40% for Joe Lunchbox Biden. And these are some of the numbers here. And if we go back, Joe Biden's at 22%. He was at 30% in October of 2019. August, he was at 28%. Bernie Sanders was at 15%, and he was at 12% back in October. Liz Warren was at 18% in October and 21% in August. She's now down to 14%. Little Petey was at 6% in August, at 8% in October. He's back to his position of 6%. Amy Klobuchar was less than 1% in August, and she was at 2% in October. She's come up the most, and now at 5%. The New York Times has helped her out. Data includes the representative respondents of 628 Pennsylvania registered voters, including 292 Democrats, 251 Republicans, and 85 Democrats, obtained from Marketing Systems Group. And this is how the poll was put together. Sample of error here is 6.2%, and Democrats up to 9%. So in other words, a lot of flux, but we don't visit Pennsylvania for a long time now. Let's see which poll we skip over here. This is Monmouth out of Long Branch, New Jersey, I think. Here, yeah, the Democratic caucus could be a 5-way contest. This is on the 28th of January here, and West Long Branch, Jersey. Joe Biden, Bernie, Petey, and Liz Warren continue to jockey for the top spots. And it's kind of interesting here. They are ganged up here. Joe Biden's at 23, Bernie's at 21, Little Petey's at 16, Warren's at 15, Amy Klobuchar finally in the double digits. We've been tracking her and her movement on our slide rule. That's one of the little models we use. Anyway, she is moving up. I would not be surprised at this, Mike, if Amy Klobuchar does surpass either Liz Warren or Little Petey. It could possibly happen. We don't know yet. We'll keep monitoring it. 2 weeks ago, Biden had 24%, Bernie had 18%, and Little Petey at 17, Warren at 15. Klobuchar had only 8 percentage points. She is moving up in the reporting there. There was a hit piece on her about a case. There was a little girl named Edwards that was shot in her house while she was literally studying her school lessons. And that was a sympathetic case, and she had framed that. But the individual convicted of it has constantly proclaimed his innocence, and some of the people in the case said that they lied, jailhouse snitches, and some people come forward and said they actually fired the bullets, and the gentleman that was convicted of was not there, and that is it was a big article in the Right Wing Hill. The problem here is it's not the case. The case is a righteous case, there's no doubt about that, the way it is framed, but that's also a part of the problem. Kamala Harris, who was at one time a state's attorney out in Oakland, and then the Attorney General of California came under the same scrutiny. At one time it was good to be a prosecutor, now not so good, and period. Now firm support here, from 47 for Klobuchar, 48 for Biden, 49 for Buttigieg, and 55 for Liz Warren, and 58 for Bernie. So Bernie is burning along. The poll last caucus goes to name a candidate that they had in mind as a second choice. Joe Biden was at 39, Liz Warren at 37. 2 points lower was Bernie Sanders. Little Petey was at 29. Trailed by 22, Tom Steyer and Yang. Tom Steyer is actually at 10. He's a second choice, very, very important in some of these caucuses. It plays to Liz Warren and Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. I'm not sure how Buttigieg will fall in these, and Liz Warren a little bit behind there. A key factor in the second choice will play out, though. It's determined by supporters will need to realign with the first choice. It didn't reach, that's the 15% viable there. If Klobuchar or Yang remains viable or visible in some precincts, the race remains tight. A hypothetical 6-candidate field puts the race at 22% for Biden, 22% for Bernie, 17% for wait a minute. For Little Petey, and 16 for Warren, and Amy Klobuchar comes up at 12. They still have her in 5th place, but once again, our slide rule sees her as going into a 4th place here. Now, virtually come viability comes down to just the top 4 candidates, though. The race is tight, but Biden appears to benefit slightly more. When likely caucus goers were asked to choose from a limited field, the race stands at 29 for Biden, 25 for Bernie, 20 Buttigieg, 19 for Warren. In this scenario, 4 in 10 Klobuchar supporters would realign with Biden, while 1 in 4 would go for Buttigieg, 1 in 5 to Warren, and just a handful to Bernie Sanders. That's wishful thinking right there. And according to the Democratic Party, in 2016, the caucuses drew 170,000 votes. This is lower than the record turnout in 2008 when Barack Obama was running. That was 240,000 caucus goers, but higher than previous contest of only 124,000. That was in 2004. Less than 1/3 of registered Democrats. It's about 614,000 in the state. Estimates the current state of the race assumes a caucus turnout similar to 2008. This is based on numbers of potential voters contacted for the polls screened through as likely caucus goers. Obama also examined what the race could potentially look like on the different turnout scenarios, and electorate include higher turnouts. They usually do this, and I'm glad they did it. Leads to as much as 6 points, increases Biden's lead to 6 points. On the other hand, a caucus electorate that is heavily populated by voters who didn't participate in primary elections, it could result in Sanders' lead about 4 points. Now let me go back over this once more. An electorate including high turnouts traditional Democratic primary voters, that would increase Joe Lunchbox Biden by 6. But if it's by voters, particularly young people, you'll see them turning out, as with President Obama. That helps out Bernie Sanders. Furthermore, these alternative turnout scenarios have the largest impact on support for Sanders, varying his voter share as much as 5 points from the benchmark measurement of 21. In this release, a range of 19 to 26. None of the other candidates' support levels vary by more than a couple of points on any of these scenarios. They still have Amy Klobuchar at 9 to 10. A turnout swing as few as 10,000 votes could determine who wins the caucus. And also finds that the candidates' favorability ratings have only seen a small movement. Warren is on top at 71% and done a favorable and 21% unfavorable, followed by Mayor Petey at 68, Biden at 68, Amy Klobuchar at 63, and Yang at 60, and Bernie at 61, Tom Steyer at 50. Bernie had dropped from his high mark of 70% favorables. Where's Bernie now? Bernie is now at 61 according to this. And we look at the scales here. We'll look at Bernie's favorable, unfavorable net ratings there. Liz Warren is at 50 plus. That was in January. Now she is at 54 plus. Little Petey is at 54 plus. Joe Biden is at 38. He was in late 46. She's at 50. Petey is at 49. Amy Klobuchar is at 45. Bernie is at 29. And he was at favorable, unfavorable ratings here. And as we kind of move along here. Anyway, the poll was conducted by phone from the 23rd to 27th. A smaller poll, 544 likely voters here. And out of 1,345 registered Democrats, unaffiliated voters, this poll has a plus or negative 4.2% out of Long Branch, New Jersey. Let's take a little break here, WBRN Radio, and we'll see if we can get the people from the university. This is from the University of Virginia Center here. The Crystal Ball Rhodes Cook is the person here. 2016 president, 2020, the Take Two can Bernie broaden his base. Unlike in 2016, Bernie Sanders has a real chance to win the Democratic nomination. However, he's likely to have to broaden his base of support to do so. These are the key takeaways here. And as we look at these, just a second here. Anyway, I look back at 2016 as Sanders began his second bid for the nomination in the process of something he never attained in 2016. Sanders' first try 4 years ago was respectable, facing, of course, Hillary Clinton. He won 22 states, 12 caucuses, 10 primaries, amongst them battleground states of Michigan and Wisconsin. He drew 43% of the national primary vote, which represented more than 13 million people. As a result, he polled the highest primary vote total in the nation's history than any other candidate not named Barack Obama, Clinton, or Trump. Yet in 2016 he never had a realistic chance of winning the nomination. Two basic stumbling blocks stood in his way. Superdelegates, the phony South, the former which comprised 15% of the convention delegates, went in mass for Hillary Clinton. She was part of the Democratic establishment, a way that Sanders never was and could not be, with Clinton's firm grip on the minority vote. The Vermont senator never was able to penetrate the South. Well, that's true. He did not, and he lost 12 of 13 primaries amongst the regions, save Oklahoma. He did win Oklahoma, Bernie. The late, great Jerry Pippin's home state. And Sanders' problems guarding the vote of African Americans and Latinos extended to other regions of the country as well, helping Clinton to dominate the vote in many of the nation's leading urban centers, result in 10 states with 15 or more electoral votes. Sanders carried the primary in only one. Michigan, a working class state there, was less than 20,000 votes out of 1.2 million. Basically, the heart of Sanders' coalition was the academic centers, a significant swath of rural America. Now, that was where DJ Trump also played. The latter was an unlikely source of votes for self-described democratic socialists, and apathy to Hillary Clinton was a result of that. And that's how DJ Trump was able to get his program going. In spite of his New York accent, his base in rural Vermont gave him a connection to primary voters in smaller states that Clinton could not match, and no doubt about that. Of the 10 primaries that Sanders won, there were 3 types. There were those progressive pedigrees, such as Oregon, Vermont, and Wisconsin. That's a state that DJ Trump pulled off, and those were in New England, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, etc. A mix of other states, Michigan and Montana, and the trio of Indiana, Oklahoma. He won West Virginia. Sanders also came close to 2 percentage points or less in the Iowa caucuses and primaries in Illinois, Kentucky, Massachusetts, Missouri, and South Dakota. So Bernie has a very good chance of winning in these states, and Joe Lunchbox Biden, anyone's been to a goat rope contest, his strength and rule is evident in the number of counties he carried in a variety of primary states outside the South. Wisconsin, he won 71 of 72, losing only Milwaukee County to Hillary Clinton. In Oregon, he swept 35 of 36, losing only one small county to Clinton by a vote of 101 to 100. In Oklahoma, he carried 75 of 77 counties. In Michigan, he took all but 10 of the state's 83 counties. Victor's within state was a microcosm of his support and weakness. Clinton dominated the Detroit area, winning Wayne County, which included the city of Detroit. That won't happen this time around. By 60,000 votes, she also carried the city's 2 major suburban counties, Oakland and Macomb, the latter of the home of the blue-collar Reagan Democrats. Outside of the Detroit area, Clinton picked off Genesee County, which included Flint and, an industrial outpost that is the birthplace of Michael Moore. But Sanders swept almost everything else in Michigan, including the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, and nearby Eastern Michigan University in Ypsilanti. My friend who used to be with broadcast group out of Atlanta, I have to check in on her. Anyway, to be sure, 2020 Democratic nomination contest has a different complexion to it than the 4 years ago. Sanders has engaged in one-on-one fights with Clinton, where he needed a majority of the vote and to move there. Pluralities do it. Democrats have far larger field. They have B&S, Bloomberg, and Steyer in the mix. And Adams supporters argue that his ability to raise impressive sums of money that has kept him in the contest, and he has raised more money than anyone except the B&S. Still, with the nomination, he will ultimately need to be more than a champion of the rural side. And this academic thing is unfair to Bernie. Period, maybe not at start, but evidently he'll need to show broader vote-getting ability in blue-collar areas. But he's doing good in places like West Virginia with industrial heritage such as Flint. This year, the Democratic race could be profoundly affected by rules changes. The superdelegates, the most significant, the role of superdelegates, which are elected, they won't come into the second ballot in the race. And just a minute here, I lost my pointer. This is a very good article in the sense that it does point out where we are in the race. And let's get some numbers here. Now, this was in 2000. This is the Clinton situation. She got 17 million votes. Bernie got 13 million. And Bernie caucuses, he got 358,000. She got 188,000 for a total of 17 million. He had 13 million there. In primaries, she had 56%. He had 43. Caucuses, he had 65. Done much better in caucuses. And in the total, he had 43%. She had 55. States won. Bernie won 10. Clinton won 29. A lot of those in the South. Bernie won 12 caucuses. She only owned 2, and so 22 and 31 there. Won the caucuses while Clinton took non-binding primaries. That's, was a scam. But again, people did not say it loud enough in 2016. And of course, it came out there in the mix. And this is some of how the raw votes went. The total was 6 million in the Midwest, 7 million and change in the West, 7 million or 935,000 in the Northeast, and 8 million in the South, for a total of 30 million votes. Clinton got 17 million, Bernie got 13 million. If we look at the Midwest, Bernie won the Midwest. He had 3 million for 13. And she had, she had 3,437,000. Out west, Bernie had 3,487,000. She had 3,865,000. That's Hillary. And in the Northeast, Bernie won that. He had 3,444,000. And let's see, this is Bernie Sanders. And we look at the percentage of primary. These are raw votes now. In the South, he had 2 million, and she had 5 million there. But if we look at the primary votes in the Midwest, Bernie had 49.4. In the West, he had 47. She had 52. And in the Northeast, 55 and 53. Now, in places like New York, he was not on the ballot there, but he was not there. So, in other words, yeah, it looks there, but she started out ahead with those superdelegates. That in itself made a determination on things. And, you look at Clinton had Illinois, Missouri, Nebraska, Ohio, and South Dakota. That's in the Midwest. She had 5. Bernie had Indiana, Michigan, and Wisconsin. In the West, she had Arizona, California, and New Mexico, and Washington. So Bernie had 2, she had 4, he had Montana and Oregon. In the Northeast, he had New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Vermont, and West Virginia. And let's see here. She had Connecticut, Delaware, Massachusetts, Maryland, Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, and D.C. And in the South, Bernie had Oklahoma. So she had all these states: Alabama, Arkansas, Florida being significant, Georgia not as much, Kentucky, Louisiana, she was not close, Mississippi, North and South Carolina, Texas and Tennessee and Virginia there. So little different landscape watching which states. And some of the turnouts, this is in Arizona, no doubt about that. She got 57% of the vote in Maricopa County, that's Phoenix in Arizona. She was 57 to 41. In Los Angeles, she got 54% to 45% for Bernie. Cook County, Chicago, she got 54%, 45 for Bernie. In Boston, Bernie got 41 to 57 for her. She got over 1 million votes in Cook County. Anyway, in Wayne County, that's Detroit, Bernie had 38%. That's about the only thing she won there. She had 60% in New York City, Bernie's hometown. He got 37% of the vote, and she got 63%. Cuyahoga County, Cleveland. He got 37% of the vote there, and 63% went to her out of 207,000. Philadelphia, City of Brotherly Love, Clinton got 37, and Bernie got 37, and Clinton got. So in Orange County, California, she got 52, and Bernie got 47. Some of these, Oakland, Michigan, Bernie at 47 to 51 for Clinton. In St. Louis, Bernie got 44%. She got 55. Seen some polling out of Missouri. Joe Lunchbox Biden is still leading there. Looking at some of these, Hannibal, Missouri, is Marion County. Bernie was at 42, she was at 55. There's only 1,600 votes there, and some of these other things, here, and not much for us to look at. In counties with sizable African American populations consistently gave Clinton her largest proportion in the primary and general election in 2016, but it was not enough. Counties with the highest percentage, percentage proportion of Latinos in Florida and the Southwest, the minority, there. So, and let me wrap this up here. So this is interesting from the center here. More of this as they go through. Conclusion. New rules, new field candidates could make for changing coalitions for second-time candidates such as Bernie. In 2008, Democratic primary, for instance, Clinton lost the African-American vote to Barack Obama in 2016. She dominated against Bernie. That's not happened. That was when Killer Mike was around. And to put himself on the road to the White House in 2020, he needs to do that. No doubt about that. Rose Cook, political reporter for the Congressional Quarterly for more than 2 decades, and a senior columnist. Got a lot of senior columnists these days running over there. So, in other words, on the 31st, the last day of January 2020, this has been Friday Jobber. This is Boston Red here in the Jerry Pippin broadcast booth. We'll see you on the week that was. And on Monday, we'll have it all. We'll wrap it up over the weekend. The last day before the Iowa caucuses, Monday morning. And we'll probably come back on Tuesday or Wednesday with what happened in Iowa and potentially what happened at the Trump impeachment hearings. Hadn't had that word here, but nonetheless, they will vote at 4 o'clock or 1600 hours on Monday Eastern time on whether or not to dispose of DJ Trump and his impeachment. And stay tuned. Have a good weekend, everyone. Good day.